Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are joining us today. My name is Scarlett Reynoso, and on behalf of Ethisphere, I'm pleased to welcome you to the live webcast of World's Most Ethical Companies, A Guide to Applying in 2020. Over the next hour, you'll hear from my colleagues Douglas Allen and Neil Thurston as they discuss changes to the 2020 Ethics Quotient and World's Most Ethical Companies application process. If you have ever joined us for an Ethisphere webcast, we know we love to take your questions and answer them throughout the presentation to make today's session more of a discussion with you. Please use the chat feature in the webcasting platform. Our goal for every webcast is to encourage you to ask any questions you may have. We are anticipating a handful of questions today, so we will try to answer as many as we can. And if we happen to run out of time, we will follow up with you via email. Following the live webcast, you will receive an email from us, which includes the recording of today's webcast and PowerPoint presentation, as well as a link to the World's Most Ethical Companies application and the WME application guide. I will quickly introduce our speakers before diving into today's session. As I mentioned, we are joined by my colleagues at Ethisphere, Douglas Allen, Managing Director of Data and Services, and Neil Thurston, Director of Data and Services. Doug, the floor is all yours.
Great, thank you, Scarlett. And again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those of you around the world joining us today for the second of our WME application webcast this week. There's a lot of questions and individuals who weren't able to attend during Tuesday's session, so we wanted to reopen the floor and engage with you all once more and how to apply for 2020, make sure we get all your questions answered, and explore the process in a little bit more detail. So again, thank you for joining, and thank you to my colleague Neil Thurston for joining as well. Neil has now, having joined the Ethisphere team about 2 years ago, I think Neil has been on the applicant side, honoree side, and now is on the Ethisphere assessment side. So we're excited to have Neil join the team and provide his perspectives as both an applicant and evaluator in the process. So thank you, Neil, for joining today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you, Neil. So in terms of what we'll cover, I know Scarlett touched on a few of the things we addressed today, but for the agenda, we want to, of course, introduce our organization and the application process itself for those of you who might not be fully initiated into what it includes and what it is. We'll touch on briefly why applying is beneficial to you and your organization, as well as what components of an application get looked at and sort of how we approach the evaluation process holistically. For those of you who are familiar with the process through prior years, we'll touch on changes we've made to the 2020 year specifically, both in terms of process and methodology and timelines as well. And of course, as we wrap for today, we'll touch on not only important dates, but some of the common pitfalls we've seen that many applicants encounter when going through the application process, whether it be the first time or the 10th time as well. So we'll cover those throughout today. And in terms of who this presentation is for, we've designed today's discussion to really be for everyone, whether you are a veteran to the process and have been through this either once in the past or many times in the past. We've highlighted specific sections, as you can see in front of you, on what to focus on in terms of what's changed, some important dates for this year, and again, common pitfalls and lessons learned that we've heard from you over time that we'll think you'll find valuable. So those are for the veterans on the line today. For those of you who are new to the process and who are interested in applying, a lot of great insights into what is evaluated, how you get started, and what you can expect for applying for the first year for the WME process. And for those of you on the line who might just be curious as to whether or not this is for you, we'll cover many areas that we believe would be helpful in terms of why participating is important, why you should, and sort of how to approach it as a first timer as well. So that's what's in front of us for today's conversation. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Ethisphere as an organization, I know there's looks like several of you on the line who are brand new to the organization. We want to touch on quickly in terms of who Ethisphere is and what we do as an organization. So we came about 14 years ago, which sounds strange saying out loud. It's been so long. But we came about really because there was a vacuum in the market for an organization that would really define what's good in terms of defining corporate behavior. When we got started in 2006, 2007, there was a plethora of resources, sites that really point out what was all that was wrong in terms of corporate behavior and things going wrong across the enterprise. So we wanted to step in and kind of fill that void and defining what's good and promulgating what's good across the space. And we do that in a few different ways. We do that by really measuring standards, defining and measuring standards. We, through not only WME, but our other media and publication services, recognize those companies who are doing business the right way and who are doing things in an exemplary fashion. And by doing so, we also convene like companies and hope to inspire advancement through our BELA community, our Business Ethics Leadership Alliance network, our various roundtables, global summits, and events. We really hope that this is a platform that others can convene and really become inspired in what we do and what they do as well. And we do that because we really firmly believe that good ethics is good business. Focusing on the long term, doing business with integrity, and really investing in communities results in sustainable businesses that outperform the market. And one of the ways in which we capture that is measuring the equity performance of those who we recognize on a year-to-year basis. This gives you a snapshot of why we think this is so important in terms of not only WME, but sort of the efforts that we measure over time as well. So this is a snapshot of the 5-year equity performance of those honorees from 2019 that are publicly traded over the past 5 years, lined up against a comparable large cap index to give you a sense of the outperformance that we've observed for those companies that we've recognized for the 2019 process. So we believe there's true value in doing business the right way, and that value is reflected in how your customers see you, how your investors see you, how your suppliers and partners see you as well, and of course all other stakeholders as well. So this is something we really believe and is really ingrained in what Ethisphere does as well. So looking at the world's most ethical companies process, how does that relate? So I had mentioned those 3 tenets in terms of what Ethisphere does, and the world's most ethical companies process covers all 3 in great detail. So what is the program? The program is an assessment of programs and practices that culminates really in a list that recognizes, quite frankly, the work you all do as compliance professionals, as sustainability professionals, as governance professionals in your organizations, and recognizes the great efforts you do through a trusted and long-term process. Again, I had mentioned this is the 14th year we've been running the world's most ethical companies process. It's well established in the marketplace, it's well respected, and it's a great badge of honor for recognizing your efforts and the great work you all do as a community. So that's certainly one of the main tenets of why we decided to embrace this program. Secondly, we designed the process and the assessment criteria to really provide you with a gap analysis and roadmap for your program in any given year. This is a process that we look at in conjunction with our methodology committee, in conjunction with the feedback that past participants give us, and update it on an annual basis to make sure that what we're representing, what we're measuring is representative of leading practices, the cutting edge practices, as well as the most up-to-date regulatory guidance and practices as well. So we really have a keen eye for designing a process that's valuable for all those who participate. And then furthermore, it allows us to garner and really collect, curate, and promote to you all vetted data and trusted insights throughout the year, whether that is the analytical scorecard that comes as a result of the process or insights that we publish to you all throughout the year. It's a phenomenal repository of insights and data that we share with the community as well. So it's a program, again, grounded in recognition, designed to give you great data in a gap analysis and roadmap, and results in data and insights shared throughout the community throughout the year. So again, something we're really excited about and are even more excited about for opening for this 2020 application year. So Neil, you want to take us through a little bit about what we evaluate as part of the WME process?
Absolutely. So, as Doug said, we do a lot of concerted work around trying to figure out what we should evaluate and how we should evaluate it. So when we do get around to looking at the evaluation, we've split it up into 5 groups here. As you can see on the slide here, we've got this, these 5 areas of ethics and the compliance program, the measurement of your ethical culture, that a process within your organization, your efforts at sustainability and corporate social responsibility, your structure and corporate governance, and as well as your efforts regarding leadership of your company within its structure, within its community, and its ethical reputation. We measure this by taking hundreds of inputs from the EQ survey, from the documentation, from a lot of other, from a lot of other sources, especially with our reputation search. We take that and we put it into these 5 weighted categories that I mentioned before. With the ethics and compliance program, it's probably the largest part of the data that we get from the EQ process. That data we take and we weigh it at about 35% of the application. Next up at about 20% is that measurement of the ethical culture, those efforts your organization takes in order to look at your culture and assess your culture. Followed again with 20% by your sustainability and corporate social responsibility efforts within your community and the larger world. 15% of that score comes from your corporate governance and structure and your changes and your efforts at bolstering corporate governance within your organization. And finally, at 10% are your efforts at overall leadership and your ethical reputation.
And we had a question come in too regarding the changes of our weights year over year. The weighted portions of our application, as Neil is showing here, has not changed for 2020. This is the same weighting scheme I believe we've had for the last 3 years. So while some of the underlying components has changed slightly for 2020, which we'll touch on here in just a few slides, the overall category weights and category definitions have not changed for the 2020 year.
That's right. Let's see if we can move this to the next slide. Perfect. So at this point, I'm sure you're asking yourself, how do I apply? We've formulated 3 fairly simple steps, which we'll outline in greater detail later on in this presentation. But essentially, the 3 things you need to know is number 1, the first and biggest step is completing the 2020 Ethics Quotient Questionnaire. Number 2 is gathering up and submitting all of the supporting documentation, which underpins a lot of the answers to the Ethics Quotient Questionnaire, and which shows off those leading practices of your organization. Third and finally is submitting the 1 application processing fee, our administrative fee for actually going through this material and going through the WME process. If you have your calendars in front of you, if you have a piece of paper, something to remind yourself, this is a very key date. We have put a deadline of Friday, November 8th of 2019 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mark that on your calendar. That is sort of the very end last date that we would like to have everybody's submissions, materials, EQ questionnaires, questions, things like that, all of that in by about that time. That's a key date, and if you can put that on the calendar and sort of work backward from that, make sure that you're getting prepared in advance of Friday, November 8th, you will give yourself some breathing room, you will be able to plan well, and you will be able to show us all of the wonderful things about your organization and not have to rush around to find us the material that you want to show us. So, diving in a bit more, we like to ask ourselves this as well. What is contained in the Ethics Quotient Survey? What all do we put into it? Thankfully for 2020, this really hasn't changed. It's still sectioned out into 8 different areas, with the 4th section, the Ethics and Compliance Program, being the largest area of questioning on the EQ, the Ethics Quotient Survey. I'll just quickly go through these sections. The first is a general introduction. It has all of the legal language around our survey process, kind of outlines the expectations and what the EQ is. The second section are a few basic questions about the organizational profile. Who are you? Who are the people who are going to be interacting with the survey? Who are your points of contact? Make sure you have that information ready to go when you fill out that second section. Third is this section about corporate governance. These are going to be questions around your board or your governing body and the basic way that your company or your organization is structured. The fourth, the Ethics and Compliance Program, is arguably the largest, and we've split this up into several different distinct sections, which we've labeled with A through G. 4A is about the program structure, the resources, and the oversight that you have at your organization. Essentially, how is your program structured? Who are the people within it, and how is that set up? B is the area around due care. This is where we're asking you questions about how you handle conflicts of interest and background checks. Section C is all about your written standards, your policies, your procedures, your frequently asked questions, any sort of written guidance that you give to your employee base around how you want the organization to function and how you want those people to interact with your organization. Section D is about training efforts, communications efforts, and awareness efforts on the part of your ethics and compliance program. Here's where we like to see the information around what kind of training and communications things that you put into place that make you shine. Section E is around your efforts at detection, monitoring, and auditing of items that go on at your company, such as misconduct, hotlines, things like that. Section F is around enforcement, discipline, and incentives that your organization gives to make sure that people are acting ethically and in compliance with the expectations at your organization. And Section G, finally here, is about how you measure the ethical culture at your organization. This area is around the focus groups you put together, the surveys you put out, whether or not your ethics and compliance personnel go out into the field and talk to people. Following after that is Section 5, all around third-party management. The items we ask about here revolve around your interactions with third parties, outside business partners, those people separate from your organization who interact and maybe interact closely with your organization to make business happen. Sixth is the citizenship, sustainability, and corporate responsibility area. In this area, we look a lot at your efforts to maintain more of an effort within your organization and with your partner organizations or your business partners around sustainability efforts, around corporate citizenship within the community and within the world, and your efforts to foster corporate responsibility. The seventh section is around leadership, mainly your organization's leading efforts outside of these previous areas, as well as a reputation check. This reputation area is based on a media search that we do. We also ask some questions about items that may have happened in the past year with your organization. Finally, Section 8 is a conclusion of the survey and some wrap-up materials.
Hey, Neil, one thing I'll point out too is one question I get quite frequently during the application period is really how long or how much time should I budget to complete the survey? And my unsatisfactory answer to this question is it really does depend. So for those of you who are embarking on this ethics quotient journey for what would be the first time, plan on a considerable amount of time. It really depends upon the organizational structure at your particular company, how well documented your program and practices are, the extent to which you're able to coordinate cleanly and quickly with stakeholders in these various areas. It can depend, and it does depend widely on those factors. So for those of you who are new to the process and are contemplating looking at the EQ survey, our recommendation here is always planning on more time than not. And by the way, too, we have, as part of this webcast, all of our materials related to the application process are available for you completely complimentary before you embark on the application. So the application guide, which if you have not received it, is available through our website by request or may be sent out after the webcast to all participants on the line today. Will contain a link to that survey to download as well. So you'll have full access to both the complete questionnaire and all other related materials prior to beginning as well.
That's an excellent point. Yes, this is a rather lengthy survey. It will take you some time. Obviously, some organizations more than others. We did have a question come in about conducting interviews with various individuals at your companies. The answer is no, not necessarily. Although often it is good to have points of contact within different parts of your organization and within different functions, such as EHR, such as legal, such as some of your C-suite, to be able to gather some of the required information to answer the EQ. I would say at least knowing where you may need to go rather than just expecting to have an interview is probably key there, starting to plan that out.
Yeah. That's a great point, Neil. But yeah, as part of our evaluation process, Ethisphere does not conduct interviews with anyone from your enterprise. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very clear. All right.
Great. Moving on to, I'll take from here, Neil. In terms of beyond the ethics quotient survey, Neil had mentioned step 2 in the process is submitting documentation as well. So documentation is used for a few different reasons, primarily to attest to the answers provided as part of the EQ survey, but also in select areas to really review and qualitatively measure the effectiveness and quality of the underlying programs and practices as identified in the survey. So it's not just simply a check mark of are the policies you indicated you have in place, but what is the quality of said policies as well. So we do take a look at and review the quality of various elements of your program as indicated on the guidelines. And again, the guidelines, which are shown here in an image, but are included as part of the application process, are available for review as well. So the document will be included as part of that application guide I had mentioned previously as well. So in terms of what we look at and what we collect, or what we request rather as part of the documentation process, there are 33 items specifically identified across 10 distinct categories. The categories follow very closely what Neil described in terms of what's measured as part of the EQ process. And we, again, utilize these documents to verify the answers given in the survey as well as to attest to the quality of the program overall. And we tried as part of the survey, as part of the documentation guidelines to connect how the documents relate to specific aspects of the survey to provide you with assistance and additional context as to why we're asking for what we're asking for. And a common question we get as part of this documentation guidance process is, look, what we're providing or what we have can be sensitive in some areas. And to that we say, please feel free to redact those areas that are perceived to be sensitive or confidential. We completely understand the need to do so. And if providing some things is not either permitted or we'll say realistic within your particular organization, let us know. There are alternatives we can explore for certain areas as well. So the point here is we respect and understand the need to be confidential and to redact certain areas, and we're willing to work with you as part of that process as well. The overall and overarching guidance here is to really follow the guidelines that we've provided. We've in painstaking detail, in my humble opinion, have provided detail in terms of what we're looking for, the format to provide it, how to organize it, how to structure it to make it as easy for both you and the assessment team as possible. So really stick to the guidelines as well. And of course, we're always available for questions, either through our WMeet applications inbox, phone meeting as well. We're happy to set up time to discuss your questions and concerns as well as part of this process. So again, lean on the guidance, lean on us, and we'll be happy to work with you on ensuring that, again, the great work you're doing is being able to be conveyed accurately and cleanly as part of this process. Okay. And Neil, I'll turn it back over to you if you want to elaborate a little bit on how we as the evaluation team, members of the evaluation team, go through the evaluation process. Hey, Neil, I'm not quite sure if you're on mute, but...
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, it looks like I was on mute. So I've been talking for a little bit. Yes, so the companies are evaluated with several different aspects from this process. And we combine them all to generate our final EQ score and to look at the world's most ethical company ranking. First off is that there is the self-reported EQ score, which is automatically generated from that EQ questionnaire that you will fill out online. That is essentially all of those questions that you'll put together that will generate one part of the score. Added into that is a qualitative scoring of the documentation, that supplementary documentation area, where we review that. And we're looking at that to kind of look at the quality of the program and the related elements. And that's why we call it a bit of a qualitative scoring. It's looked at in comparison to the EQ answers that were received there to give us a more holistic view of your program, your efforts, and your best practices. The third part that we have here is an adverse media search and a review of any outstanding litigation. What we do, we have a Factiva source where we look up information through public sources such as newspapers, articles, lawsuits, any sort of public documentation around that. And we do take that into consideration as part of the reputation area score. Again, these are all public records, and there is an opportunity within the EQ process for your organization to respond to items that it knows about on the EQ survey area. The fourth is, having the EQ survey, the documentation, and the research combining to arrive at a final EQ score. That's where we mesh everything together and we look at that. And the final step is that we look at that score and evaluate it in the context of like applicants. And when we talk about like applicants, we may talk about a number of different factors, such as size, such as region, such as industry. We take these all into consideration with all of the above items in order to whittle down our list and make sure that we have the world's most ethical companies for that year. Any particular items on this one that okay, that's fine. So let's look at what's changed for 2020 for those of you who have been through this process before. With the Ethics Quotient Questionnaire, we have created an annotated document for easy identification of the year over year, that is, the items from 2019 that have changed for 2020 changes. We know there's been a lot of questions within the community and people wanting to have this as a great resource, and we've heard you and we've put this into place. It's a great tool. We've made some changes focused on clarifying a few of the existing questions. So we're trying to get a little bit better data and get you information that is not, say, as ambiguous, or maybe, we want you to be able to answer it cleanly, clearly, and in a way that gets all of us the correct information. We have a new question on how managers are interacting with the report intake system. That is when somebody reports some sort of misconduct or an issue. We also have a new question around evaluating mental health programs in place for employees at your organization. Regarding the documentation requirements, we've also created an annotated document for easy identification of year-over-year changes, again, recommended by the community, and which we hope will be well received. We've also introduced some new changes focused on clarifying existing questions within the documentation request, which we hope you will find very useful. And finally, we've identified a request for how organizations are leveraging the findings following an assessment of their ethical culture. Bren, any questions or?
Yeah, one comment here. It's for those of you who have gone through our process before, you may recall that the 2019 ethics quotient portion of the process underwent a pretty significant change. We had a chance to review the survey and make significant changes to every category and really update it to reflect current practices. For the 2020 year, we really focused on clarifying and revising questions to add clarity, really based on a lot of applicant feedback, right? When questions were received or confusion was originated, we attempted to eliminate that through clarification mainly. So we hope the 2020 survey, again, for those of you who have seen it in the past, is a little bit more of an easier experience perhaps in the brand new survey that was in 2019. And again, as Neil had mentioned, both for the EQ questionnaire and the documentation guidelines, we've created a version of both that show you in bright highlighted yellow the changes we've made specifically. I know it's been a very popular request from many individuals over the years, and we're very happy to provide that to you this year in helping you complete the process as well for 2020.
All right. Let's see. Beyond just the list, what do you get from participating? We all know that going through this process is quite a lot. It's a huge survey. The task itself can be quite a lot of intensive time. Here is what you get out of participating. We do send you the EQ 2020 scorecard after we're done evaluating all of the items here. We also use the data from the EQ survey to create WME 2020 Insights series of reports and webcasts, and Doug and his team put a ton of time into creating excellent data from this EQ survey that's useful for quite a lot of people throughout the organizations, not only within the ethics and compliance area of your organization, but also applicable to other areas of your organization, legal, governance, procurement, things like that. It's useful throughout a bunch of different areas. And finally, for BELA members, we create focused facts reports and benchmarking reports that BELA member organizations can use to strengthen their program, improve their program, and to figure out new and innovative ways to lead their business and their industries. Doug, am I forgetting anything here? I know that simply filling out the survey itself can be quite an interesting task, which gives you some idea of what practices are out there or may be out there. But yeah, there's definitely other items, tangible items that Ethisphere produces that we give out to our community.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. It's a great point that it's what we're known for. I think what WME is most known for, of course, is the recognition and the badge, right? It's something that, again, it's been purposefully built and designed and engineered to really celebrate those companies doing things in really the best way. However, we've also been very keen on making sure there's a tremendous amount of value for anyone who goes through the process in a variety of different formats. So it's whether you're exploring, again, gaps in your program that you can assess with the questionnaire, or whether trending data or analysis or benchmarking is important to you. There's many different facets to this that were designed to help you really not only celebrate your program, but for others, it's also a way to bolster and increase the maturity of your program as well across its various facets. So,
yeah, we did get one question about whether the scorecard includes a gap analysis for the company that's being given a scorecard.
Yeah, it's a great question. The scorecard features primarily broad trends across the data set from all honorees for a given year, and it calls out where various categories, how your organization performs across each category vis-a-vis the entire honoree population for the given application year. So there are data points cited, there's trends cited, your scores are provided that provides that gap analysis at a higher level, as well as a trend analysis as well. So it's provided in what I believe last year was a 22 or 21 page PDF report that again goes into all of these things in detail as well.
Yes, and the Bella group member benchmarking item does tend to lend itself a bit more toward finding gaps and to looking at your practices a bit more closely in comparison with your peer group. So let's see.
Great. Thank you.
So let's say you are saying to yourself, I'm ready. What is it I need to do first? And breaking this out, as I said we would. The first item is essentially confirming, is my organization eligible? And to that we say, any company, be it public or private, for-profit, not-for-profit, based anywhere in the world, is eligible to participate. Now, understanding that, we do generally not allow nonprofit colleges, universities, governments, governmental agencies, government majority-owned companies, and non-government organizations to be eligible for WME. The second point is reviewing the application materials, looking over all of those documents that we've been mentioning here in the first part of the webinar. If you are a previous honoree, your application link has already been sent to you automatically. If you are viewing this live, a link to the application form will be sent in a follow-up email. If you are listening to this in a recording, you may go to www.worldsmostethicalcompanies.com and you will find a registration link there, and we can get you set up that way. The third, and absolutely not least, but certainly very important part, is to review the frequently asked questions. We've taken a lot of the concerns from over the years, a lot of the things that we've seen, and we know we want to anticipate for you, and we've developed an FAQ at www.worldsmostethicalcompanies.com/FAQs. We are constantly looking at that, revising that, and trying to make sure that it contains the information which can answer your questions quickly and easily, and in a way that's can get you up and going.
That's right. Thank you, Neil. And one thing, actually, a question that came in that is a great question is, to what extent for those organizations who have applied in the past, do we essentially start every evaluation year from what would be zero? And we do. We do. Mm-hmm. We do not consider previous materials or submissions.
That's absolutely right. Yes, we look at the material as it comes in for that year. It's to provide a fair and equal plane for people to show us what they currently have going on in their program, and for us to look at the best practices as they exist that you have sent to us.
And that, Neil, is a great segue into some of our common application pitfalls. Mm-hmm. I'll jump to the very bottom bullet, which also addresses the question, and that's save a record of your application materials for future years. Again, I had mentioned that the process is evaluated and updated on an annual basis. However, much of it does remain consistent in many facets. So preserve that material from previous years and use that as your baseline in subsequent years. Part and parcel with that, if you have in fact applied in the past, we are happy upon request to provide you with a copy of your submission from the previous year. And that again is a great resource to help you and refresh you in terms of what was submitted last year as well. So those are two, I would say, time-saving features that I would keep in mind. Either whether it's your first year for future years or if you have applied in the past, do request that PDF.
Yes. Absolutely. And the other one to pair with that is to start early. I know we mentioned that a little bit earlier, but it certainly bears repeating. Start organizing early is maybe a better way to phrase that. To start looking at the survey, print it out, keep a copy of the PDF on your desktop, take a look at the inputs you're going to need, the people you may have to talk to the places you may have to go to find the supporting documentation. This takes time, big or small. It's a matter of organization, and it's a matter of keeping up on it. I have had to do this for several years in a row, and every year that I started early, it was much easier to get there before our November 8th, 2019 deadline at 11:59 p.m. EST. Again, I can't stress enough, print out that PDF version or put it on a desktop. Make sure that you've got that survey somewhere that you can, in some way, shape, or form, start to anticipate the answers or find the answers and record them on that separate version of the EQ survey. Separate from that, take a look at the FAQ section on Ethisphere's WME website. This will contain a lot of answers for a lot of the common questions that come up. And even if you've been there once, you may find yourself returning again and again. It is a valuable resource year over year. One other key item that we've found tends to help is designating a single individual to be the point of contact, to own that survey and the application process. When you do have one person coordinating the organization, coordinating the information finding, you tend to find that there's less interruption. There is sort of a greater concentration upon the task. The other thing for that person to do is to lean on the documentation guidelines that we've provided as you organize and prepare a submission. An organized submission is a submission that goes much, much faster. You will find that we give you a lot of organization around where to link up the supporting documentation to parts of the EQ and the questions that you've answered there, as well as where you can show us and how you can show us documents that emphasize where your company shines. And essentially, if you have further questions, if you can't find something in the FAQ, if there's a point at which you're very stuck in trying to get answers to us, trying to get something into us, or just you really are frustrated with something, we're here. Reach out to our team at wmeapplications@ethisphere.com. We will be checking this email throughout. We'll be finding ways to help you out if you're stuck. Please feel free to reach out to us.
Yes, thank you, Neil. And just an administrative note as we wind towards the end of the presentation for today. Do get your questions in now if anyone has any remaining questions. We have to take them live while we have a few more slides remaining.
And maybe one other point, I'm not sure if we've quite touched on this. It just kind of reminded me. One other reason we ask that people use the PDF version to solicit input, putting your responses into the online survey and closing it and trying to come back can be problematic from an IT standpoint from time to time. There is certain skip logic embedded within the questionnaire, which if you have to go back and reselect something, it may not work properly. Plus, there's simply a time-saving element in using a separate form to collect and gather your answers and your responses. Is that by the time you have finished gathering all of that and then double-checked it, you will have the correct answers in front of you so you can breeze through the online submission.
That's right. And Neil, we received a question regarding the application fee as well.
This is perfect. There is one fee. It is a $3,000 US administrative fee. It is the only fee required to participate and to put in your submission. It is the same fee regardless of organization. Doesn't matter how small or how big you all are. And it is unchanged from the 2019 application year. And just so we're absolutely clear, we do have the WME 2020 logo. The licensing fee for honorees on that is optional. and it is something where if your organization is selected as an honoree, you may elect to use that logo and to pay the optional licensing fee. If you are in that situation, we can definitely discuss that with the WME marketing group. We also have an optional fee for the benchmarking services. That is comparing your submitted EQ answers and responses against a selected peer group and the WME honoree set for that year. And that is an optional service with its own optional fee.
That's right, Neil. Thank you. And really, the administration fee we've introduced, I believe, it was introduced 3 years ago, in 14 years of doing the process. As we continue to grow the process year over year, it just became untenable for the organization to continue to do this without the administration fee. So it really helps cover our costs in managing, updating, reviewing, and really monitoring all the progress throughout. So again, this is a fee that we've have not changed year over year, and remains one flat fee and the only required fee in order to apply for any given year. And to be clear, the logo licensing fee, Neil briefly discussed as well, it is purely optional. Honorees are not obligated to certainly license the logo, and certainly are welcome to recognize themselves and discuss themselves as an honoree status without its use, but certainly want to provide that option, or at least disclose that option now as well, for those of you who are considering applying.
All right. I'm looking for, I don't know if we have discussed much about the other licensing fees. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that the marketing team can discuss that with honorees at a point, but I don't know if we have additional information on that at the moment regarding the logo or the benchmarking.
Yeah, I believe, Neil, for those of you who are asking, the licensing fee has not changed. It generally starts at, I believe, 10,000 US per a given year. It goes up from there. There's two different tiers of licenses. The vast majority of organizations use that base license. For those who have broadcast television usage and some other wide-reaching effects, there is an elevated license for that, which more information will come out, I believe, over the fall with more information on those fees as well. But yes, the licensing fees have not changed year over year.
Yeah, we did have one question come in about an organization which is a university or a college, and as we did mention before, I do not believe that universities or colleges are eligible to participate in the WME process.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Thank you, Neil, for that. Yeah, and so as we approach the launch, or as we launch the 2020 application year, just a few important dates to keep in mind. Of course, with this early August launch, we have now released all materials related to how to apply. So for those of you who have not received your materials, you will receive them after today's webcast, and certainly we provide them by request on our website as well. And so as Neil did mention as well, the application materials are all due on November 8th. We ask that all materials, including the survey submission, the documentation, as well as the application fee, are submitted on that November 8th date, on or before November 8th. Now, the order in which those are provided does not matter. All that we ask is all three are submitted on or before November 8th, again, in any order as well. So don't feel obligated to provide that fee right away. You're welcome to begin the application right away, review your survey answers, complete the survey, again, as long as everything is submitted in its totality on that November 8th date. The first week of February is when all applicants are announced, or rather all applicants are notified of their application status privately. The team spends the latter half of November, all of December and January conducting and evaluating all the materials submitted for the application year. And again, early February is when all applicants are notified privately. We, as a point of policy, do not announce any non-honorees publicly, and we keep that as strictly confidential and held only within those organizations who do apply. Late February is when the public announcements of the 2020 honorees are made. Again, this is only those who are recognized for the 2020 year will be announced. And we have that gap in timing to allow your organizations to prepare any requisite communications, press releases, and so on that you wish to partake in during the month of February in anticipation of that late February launch as well. And that leads us to the end of March. The last day of March, March 31st in 2020, Ethisphere will be hosting its Gala Awards Dinner celebration. Again, this is an event hosted in New York City that recognizes and celebrates all of those who made the list for the 2020 application year. It's an event we've held for, I believe, 11, 12 years now. And running, it's a phenomenal event. It's again a great culmination of all of your efforts throughout the previous year in aggregating and providing the information. We provide guest speakers. It's a dinner event, again, in New York City, and it's a great, again, a celebration for those of you who are recognized for the year. The next 2 days following the Gala Awards dinner is Ethisphere's Global Ethics Summit in New York City. And again, this is a 2-day conference that really highlights the best in practices amongst all global leaders in terms of business ethics, sustainability, governance practices. It includes a great panel of C-suite leaders, boards of directors, chairpersons, compliance professionals, and so on, also held in New York City as well. And shortly after the event, we'll be distributing the Ethics Quotient's scorecards to all organizations who participated, as well as opening up the window for benchmarking conversations for any of you who are interested as well. So that gives you a sense of the overall timeline for the 19 and 20 application period, and look forward to receiving all your information around that time frame. Great.
Well, wonderful. We definitely want to take some time to answer any questions. If you've got anything kind of rolling around in your mind, feel free to send us a message over the chat, and we'll definitely address it. Do we have any other sort of remarks, things top of your head, Doug?
Yeah, at this time, Neil, I believe we can wrap and save everyone about 10 minutes of their afternoons or mornings.
Okay.
The application email in front of you is always open for your questions, concerns as you navigate the 2020 process. Neil, myself, and all the members of the application team are privy to that inbox, so we will make sure for a timely reply to you. But again, we're, in closing, are just extremely excited to be able to open up the 2020 process to all of you this year. Welcome your questions, welcome your concerns, and look forward to receiving and taking a look at all the great work you've been doing throughout this year and the last. So, Neil, unless anything you have left for you, I think we can wrap a few minutes early. Again, thank you for everyone for your time. And again, are very excited to initiate and kick off the 2020 application year.
No, I think that does it for us. Thank you all very much.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.